Welcome everyone to another week of Ramban ala Parsha. This week we're Zocha to be Messiah Sefer Vayikra by reading Parshas Bechukotai, which we talked about last week. The Ramban really thinks that Bahar and Bechukotai go together, but they're separated for obvious reasons this year. It's a leap year, and we need it to keep to the cycle of the Torah. There are, despite the fact that Bechukotai is a short Parsha, there really are any number of fascinating Rambans. I picked as a theme nature. The Ramban has a complicated relationship with nature, you could say. On the one hand, it's a fact, and the Ramban was a doctor, and he understood nature better than we do. On the other hand, the Ramban thought that it was kind of an either-or, nature or hashgacha pratis. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu could overcome nature at any point that he wants to. We think of that as a miracle, but sometimes there are people who live their lives with that level of hashgacha pratis, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is deciding, for example, if I let go of this piece of paper, is it going to fall or not? So I'm confident that if I let go of it, it's going to fall. But the Ramban would say it depends who you are. And so that's a theme we want to pursue. And of course, I owe you from last week this idea of why it is that Erechin is what ends Sefer Vayikra. I don't know that the Ramban's answer is so fulfilling on that, but we're learning Ramban, so we'll do that as well. Okay, let's start at the beginning of the parsha. Im bechukotai telechu vet mitzvotai tishmeru va'asitem otam v'natati gishmechem v'itam v'natena haaretz yivulah ve'etz hasadeh yitain piryo. So if we keep the Torah, what's going to happen? V'natati gishmechem v'itam. And the Ramban is kind of curious. The greatest bracha, the first bracha we get, is v'natati gishmechem bi'itam? Is it such a great bracha? So says the Ramban in the very first Ramban on the parsha, it's pasuk dalid, hikdim devar hagishamim. The first bracha is rain. Ki bivoam bi'itam ka'asher yeyot, because when it rains in its proper time, yihiyeh ha'avir zach v'tov. Sometimes you're walking in the country, and it's right after a rain. It's less so in Israel because it only rains in the winter. But in America, in North America, there's a rain, and all of a sudden the air is clear, and it feels really, really nice. V'hama'ayanot v'haneharot tovim, and the rivers run, and they're full. V'yihiyeh zeh sibat b'riut ligufim. Right? So on the one hand, says the Ramban, the rain isn't just rain. It's not just the means to an end. When it rains, nature works. The air is clear, the rivers are full. It's a healthy environment to live in. V'hapeirot kulam yirbu v'yitbarchu bahen. And crops grow beautifully in the beautiful weather. Ka'asher yomar unitana haaretz v'natina haaretz yivulah ve'etz hasadeh yitain piryo. It's related. It's not just the rain. The rain is the source for the whole ecosystem to work perfectly. When that happens, when nature works, when the air is clear and when the streams run fully, why would a person get sick? A person, God forbid, no women will miscarry, no animals will miscarry. And their days will be full, meaning not that days will be full, they'll live a long time. Ki bihiyot hagufim gidolim ubriyim, because when we grow to full stature, when we're big, when we're healthy, yitkaimu ki me adam. Maybe we'll live as long as Adam Harishon. I think that's what that means. Vihinehi gidolah shebibrachot. So it's exactly the opposite. We think, rain, what's the great thing about rain? Says the Ramban, no, rain is the secret to everything. Rain is the greatest of the brachot, because when it rains in its proper time, when it rains the right amount, when it rains when necessary, nature works. And when nature works, all the other brachot come into being. People are healthy, they live long and full lives, they don't miscarry, nature works, fields yield, greater amounts than they should yield. It's a wonderful, great world. And says the Ramban, all of that is based on v'natati gishmechem bi'itam. Okay, so just that's the first Ramban, and you get a sense of a very, very positive relationship with nature. In fact, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is blessing us in a way that the bracha will fulfill itself through nature. Okay, you read on two more psukim. V'natati shalom ba'aretz u'shchabtem ve'ein ma'acharid v'hishbati chaya ra'am min ha'aretz v'cherev lo savor ba'aretzechem. I will banish chaya ra'ah, wild animals, right? Animals that hurt human beings. I'll banish them from the world. And here, aside from the Ramban's general take on nature, there's something else in the Ramban that I want to point out. If there was a halachic medrash, the Ramban would never take sides, or he would support the halacha. The halacha is the halacha. But with respect to medrashim, and even midrashay halacha, that are not halacha l'maisa, but are more machshavti, are more philosophical, the Ramban feels free to take a side. And so on this pasuk, v'natati shalom ba'aretz, he says, v'hishbati chaya ra'am min ha'aretz, he says, well, it's a machlokus in the Sifra what these words mean. Al da'at Rabbi Yehuda she'omar ma'aviran min ha'olam hu kipshuto. He says the simple pshat is Rabbi Yehuda, which is there simply won't be wild animals in the world. How does that work? Shelo yavo chayot ra'ot be'artzam. They won't come into where human beings live. Why? Ki bihiyot hasova ubirvot hatova. When there's plenty, and I'll editorialize here, I'll say people don't have to live together, right? There's not just one source of food. People can live spread out and their fields work and everything grows and everything is running properly. V'heyot ha'arim meleot adam, and there's plenty of human beings in the world. Lo tavona chayot b'yishuv. Animals will stay away. They're not going to attack human beings because there's a lot of human beings. So that, I think, is the simple pshat. And the Ramban says, however, there's another pshat. Va'aldat Rabbi Shimon she'amar mashbitan shelo yaziku. Rabbi Shimon's pshita is less natural. Rabbi Shimon says, no, there'll be wild animals, but they won't attack us. Yomar v'hishbati ra'at hachayot min haaretz. V'hishbati chaya ra'ah, so this pshat is no. I will destroy the evil from the animals, and animals will be docile. And you won't have to be afraid of being attacked by a lion on your way home from shul or on your way home from work. And then shockingly, the Ramban says, V'hu anachon. He doesn't pick this simple pshat. Now, I think he doesn't pick this simple pshat because he wants it to be a bracha. And brachos aren't simple things that can just happen naturally. It's miraculous. So how does it work? Says the Ramban, Ki tihiyeh eretz Yisrael be'eit kiyum hamitzvot kasher haya ha'olam mitchilato kodem cheto shel adam harishon. Says the Ramban, Eretz Yisrael one day is going to go back to how the entire world was before original sin. Before Adam and Chava ate from the Eitz Hadas, animals did not attack human beings. Ein chaya varemes meimit adam. Right? You didn't have to worry. Adam HaRishon walked around Gan Eden with animals, with lions, with tigers, with bears. Oh my, whatever. Right? It was natural. Ukmo she'amru ein arod meimit ela chet meimit. Right? The Gemara says this already. It's not the bite of a serpent that kills a human being. It's sin. Right? The Ramban believes it's a philosophic matter that sin kills people, not, God forbid, cancer, not animal bites, not anything in nature. It's our misbehavior that leads to our downfall. V'zeh she'amar katuv v'shiasha yonek al chur patan. Right, the suckling baby is going to play next to a serpent's lair because the serpent doesn't kill. It's sin that kills. V'chein ufara v'adov tirena v'aryeh kabakar yochal teven ki lo haya hateref b'chayot haraot rak mipnei cheto shel adam. Originally, says the Ramban, animals were, I think the word is a herbivore. A carnivore is a person who eats meat. Animals, like human beings, by the way, before the Mabul, were vegetarians. We didn't eat any meat. And animals didn't eat meat either. As a result, they had no desire to eat us. They were happy to live in peace with us. So what happened? Ki lo haya teref bechayot hara'ot rak mipnei cheto shel adam ki nigzar alav liyot teref l'shinehem. One of the punishments for eating the Eitz Hadas was that animals now became, opponents. Animals now had in their nature the idea of eating human beings, something that wasn't supposed to be in the world, and something that wasn't in the world till that happened. Yes, it happened the first day, but I don't know, maybe it was a long day. The world originally as created, animals and human beings, says the Ramban, was supposed to live in harmony, right? That's what the Navi says, V'gar ze'evim keves ugidi yirbatz, right? The lion will lie down with the lamb. Limos HaMashiach, the pasuk in Yeshayahu. That's how it's supposed to be. V'husam teref hativi mehem gam litrov zo et zo ki yadua. When their nature changed, right? So then animals not only attacked human beings, they also attacked each other, which also wasn't going to be the case originally. Ki b'tarfam ha'adam pa'am achat yosifu liyot ra'im yoter. That's just a function of nature. If you attack a human being once, your desire becomes greater. You become, a more problematic animal. V'chein amar katuv v'yilamed litrov teref adam achol. Once you learn to do it, it becomes nature. V'hinei bibriato shel olam ne'amar b'chayot shenatan lahem ha'esev la'achla. Right? Animals were only supposed to eat vegetation. V'chsiv u'l'chol chayat ha'aretz u'l'chol of hashmaim u'l'chol romeis al ha'aretz asher bo nefesh chaya et kol yerek esev la'achla. That's how they were made. V'amar ha'katuv v'hichein kihu hateva asher husam bohem lo'ad. The original nature of animals was not to be carnivores. The original nature of animals, like the original nature of human beings, was to be vegetarians. Va'achar kach lamdu hateref mipnei hachet hamemit ka'asher perashti. But when human beings started sinning with the first sin in the world, then animals learned to be able to attack human beings. When man was permitted after the Mabul to become a carnivore and to eat animals and to shech them, meaning the Torah then had to warn us not to kill. Right? We have to be careful of that. V'lo nefesh chaya miyad chaya b'chaverta nisharu al minhagam litrof. At that point, God permitted animals to continue to kill, to continue to be carnivores and to eat meat, and to be a danger to human beings. Ubehemat eretz Yisrael ala shleimut tishbot ra'at minhagam v'ya'amdu ala teva harishon asher husam bohem be'ed yitziratam. Says the Ramban, but in Eretz Yisrael, when, let's assume, all the Jews keep the Torah and all the Jews are good, if there's no sin in Eretz Yisrael, animals will have to go back to their original nature. It's not really a miracle. That's how they were made. Animals were made to be vegetarians. When we started sinning, we introduced into the world and into the nature of animals this desire for meat, and by extension, the desire to kill human beings. But that will go away. In Eretz Yisrael, that will go away. Va'al kein amar ha'katuv al yimei ha'goel ha'yotzei migeza yishai sheyashuv ha'shalom ba'olam v'yechdal ha'teref. That's why the Navi tells us when Mashiach comes, everything will go back to its normal nature. Says the Ramban, what we recognize every day is not the normal nature. The fact that if a bear, saw me camping, something I've never done, I would run. That's because the nature of a bear right now is to rip me to pieces. But says the Ramban, that's not how God made bears. That's the result of our misbehavior. But if we're living in Eretz Yisrael and we're keeping the Torah and we're not sinning, and as a parens, I'll say it's not clear whether it's all of us who are not sinning or most of us who are not sinning. But if that's the case, says the Ramban, animals will go back to their normal nature. V'hishpati chaya ra'a min haaretz Ra'at hachaya will be mushpat. Right? So the Ramban here thinks the miracle is not the pshuto shel mikra, like Rabbi Yehuda, that they'll be human beings, so there won't be animals. They'll eventually wither away and die. No, their nature will be changed, and animals will live comfortably and harmoniously with human beings. Why? Because it's only because of our sin, which is A, the cause of all death in the world, and B, what changed nature from the original plan to make animals carnivores. That will change, says the Ramban. When we return to the way the world is supposed to be, when we return to the way we're supposed to be, animals will no longer have that desire, and the world will return to a harmonious place. Okay? That's the second Ramban on nature. And again, we can learn certain things about the Ramban's general view of nature. Let's do the third and last one we're going to do today, and that's a few psukim later. It's a fascinating pasuk for many, many reasons. Says the pasuk, "V'natati mishkani b'tochachem, v'lo tigal nafshi etchem." Right? I'll live amongst you, "V'natati mishkani b'tochachem," and you won't disgust me, and I won't be disgusted by you. In the middle of a long, long Ramban, the Ramban returns to this theme of nature, and he says, it's maybe a quarter of the way down in pasuk Yud Aleph, Perek Chavav. Yes. V'hatam bazeh ki habrachot afal pi shehem nisim. Right, it says Ramban, the brachos that the Torah is giving us now at the beginning of Bechukotai, they're miraculous. However, heim min hanisim hanistarim shekol haTorah malayamehem kasher perashti. The fact that you don't recognize them, it's not a nes nigla, it's a nes nistar, doesn't make it less of a nes. The Ramban would tell you when the sun comes up tomorrow morning, that's a miracle. It comes up every day. Okay, so we don't see it as a miracle. But that's not nature. Vehem afilu liyachid ha'oved. These things are true even for individuals who worship God. Ki ka'asher yihya ish hachasid shomer kol mitzvot Hashem elokav. Because the more saintly a person is in keeping the Torah and mitzvos, yishmerehu hakel min hacholi va'akarut v'hashchol v'yemale yamav b'tov. Right, it says the Ramban, a person can rise above the normal rules of nature. A person who really loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a person who really keeps the Torah mitzvahs, who really cares, God can remove from him illness and the inability to have children and mourning, God forbid, somebody who dies early. V'yimalei yamav b'tov. He'll have a great life. Aval elu habrachot shebeparsha azot hein klaliyot ba'am. The reason that these things are more noticeable as miracles, he says, is because God is blessing all of us. Ve'hein bihiyot kol amenu kulam tzadikim. When the whole nation, all the Jewish people are tzadikim, ulekach yazkir tamid bekan haaretz, v'natina haaretz yivula, v'yishavtem lavetach ba'artzechem, v'natati shalom ba'aretz, u'shchavtem ve'ein macharid, v'yishpati chaya min haaretz. These are not brachos for individuals, they're brachos for all of us. V'cherev lo ta'avor ba'artzechem, right? They're national brachot. Ukvar be'arnu ki kol ela habrachot kulam nisim ein b'teva sheyavo hagshamim, right? It's not nature that it rains in the proper time. V'yah shalom lanu min ha'ivim, and that we're not attacked by our neighbors. V'yavo moech bilvavam lanus meyam mipnei chamisha, and that 100 run away from 5. That's not nature. That is ba'asotenu hachukim v'hamitzvot. V'lo sheyihiyeh hakol hefech mipnei zarenu hashana hashvi'it. Right? Nature doesn't stop working naturally because we didn't observe Shemitah. That's also a miracle. It's a curse. But the fact that we're kicked out of Eretz Yisrael because we don't keep Shemitah, that's not natural. That's a unique zera. Va'af al pi shehem nisim nistarim sha'olam kimin hagono hegi mahem. Right? Even though they're quote-unquote hidden miracles, they could happen at any time. Aval heim mitparsimim mitzad heyotam tamid la'olam b'chol ha'aretz. Says the Ramban, it's true. When it happens to one person, maybe it doesn't make headlines. But when it turns out that the infant mortality rate in Israel is 0, that makes headlines. That's in the New York Times. Everybody starts noticing, why is the economy working so well only in Israel? Why are people healthy so, only in Israel? Why do people live to be 100 in Israel? Says the Ramban, it becomes popularized, becomes recognizable, because it's not just one person, it's not just a tzaddik, it's all of us. Ki mat tzaddik ha'achad yichye v'yasir Hashem machala mikirbo v'yimalei yamav. If there's one tzaddik who lives to be 120 and he doesn't get sick and everything is great in his life, yikre gam ze biktzat rishayim. Sometimes that happens in the world. Aval shetihye eretz achat kula va'am echad tamid beredet hageshem bi'ito v'so. Right, every Friday night at midnight it rains till 4 a.m. No one's out. It's a blessing. When it happens once or twice, it's not noticeable. When it happens all the time, you start asking yourself, what's going on? V'sova, v'shalva, v'shalom, uvridu gvura, v'shivron ha'ivim. Right? We win every war. We don't have to be afraid of our enemies. They're afraid of us. It becomes something everybody notices. Binyan she'ein kamo b'chol ha'olam. None of this exists in other lands. V'yivada lakol ki me'et Hashem haytazot. So the Ramban is saying, as the Jewish people in the land of Israel become less dependent on nature and more dependent on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we become better, HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts suspending rules of nature in favor of giving us a great, great life. And it's true, it happens in our life and it happens to people. But when it happens to all of us, that becomes a miracle. And that becomes something that the whole world takes account of. Va'al kein amar v'ra'u kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra lecha v'yara'u mimeka. Right? All the Gentiles will see the great things that are going on in the land of Israel. They'll be afraid of us. They'll know that something is happening. And then, of course, sadly, v'hefech zeh yihiyeh b'klalot b'onshei haaretz. And of course, God forbid, it can be the opposite. That terrible things are happening to the Jewish people because we're not acting properly. And as great as things can be, and things are from time to time, that's how terrible they can be. That's how horrible they can be. And that's how punishing God could be of us when we don't keep the Torah. Right? It's a risk-reward. I'm skipping a bunch of lines now. V'haklal. Ki bihiyot Yisrael shleimim vehem rabim lo yitnaheg inyanam b'teva klal. When the Jewish people are populous, and when we keep the Torah and we worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then nature doesn't really affect us. Lo begufam, lo ba'artzam, lo bichlalam, v'lo b'yachid mehem. Not to all of us, not to some of us, not to any of us. Ki yivarech Hashem lachmam umeimam v'yasir machala mikirbam ad shelo yitztarchu l'rofei lehishtamer b'derech midarchei harefuot klal. We won't need doctors. We won't be sick. Kemo shamar ki ani Hashem rofecha v'chein ayu atzadikim osim bizman hanevuah gam kein yikrem avon shiacholu lo yidrishu birofim rak b'neviim. Says the Ramban, there'll be a time where people won't have to and won't go to the doctor. They'll go to the prophet. Because nature won't really affect us. When we become great, when God's promises come true through us, right, there won't be a reason to go to a doctor. If there's something wrong with me, if I'm sick, I'll go to the Navi and I'll ask him, what did I do wrong? How can I make it up? How can I fix myself? And so you see this idea in the Ramban. There is nature. There has to be nature. There's nature working in our favor. But ultimately, then there's the second Ramban, which is animals going back to is it pre-diluvian? There's a great word like that. I'm not sure, before original sin. Animals going back to their original natures, which is to live normally with human beings. And then there's the highest level, which is all of us basically, transcending nature as a people. And everybody else, now even though it's true, says the Ramban, ultimately, when I don't get sick, that's a nes nistar. And when you win the lottery, maybe that's when good things happen to individuals, maybe people don't take account of it. But when good things happen to all of us as a collective, then the whole world's going to take account of it. and then it's going to become a nes nigla, and then it's going to make the world take into account the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world. And God forbid the opposite. If we're not deserving and we don't do mitzvos, then the opposite will happen to us. Okay, those are three major Rambans on the theme of nature. Let's just do one quick one to finish up the idea that we mentioned last week. If you go to after the Tochacha, right, you have brachos in Bechukotai, then you have the Tochacha, horrible, bad stuff. And the pasuk says, Eila hachukim v'hamishpatim. This is the last pasuk of the Tochacha, or the pasuk after the end of the Tochacha. Eila hachukim v'hamishpatim v'hatorot asher natan Hashem beino uvein b'nei Yisrael b'har Sinai b'yad Moshe. Right? What a great pasuk. I was learning with a guy this week, and he said, yeah, that's the last pasuk in Vayikra. And I said, no, it isn't. There's another section in Vayikra of Erechin, of Temura, of all these like kind of strange halachas, of Nidarim. So why wouldn't the Parshas Vayikra, why wouldn't the Sefer Vayikra end then? Instead it starts, Vayidare Hashem Moshe Lemor, Daber b'nei Sova Amarta Lehem, Ish ki afli neder be'erkhan fashot l'Hashem. So Ramban gives a very technical answer. This is Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Aleph. Gam zo ha-parsha divuka. It's attached to what came before it. This parsha, says the Ramban, Shehaita b'har Sinai. The first reason is that the rules of the Nidarim and the Erechin and all the things that happened at the end of Parshas Bechukotai was given to Moshe at Har Sinai, along with Shemitah, along with the rest of Sefer Vayikra. Mechuberet el hatochachot. They were given together. Kihi b'mishpitei hayovel, kimoshi hizkir b'makdish sadeh mikneh v'sadeh achuzah. Because a lot of, even though we don't really focus on it, a lot of the end of Sefer Vayikra is related to Yovel. The Sedeh Achuzah that we have, they will go out in Yovel, they won't go out in Yovel. If they're promised to the Beis Hamikdash, right? There are all kinds of reasons why this is here. But that's the Ramban's idea. It's attached to the story and the halachos of Yovel, and it was also given by HaKadosh Baruch Hu together with the halachos of Shemitah and Yovel and everything else that came in Vayikra. Ela sheklal mishpetei kol nedarim b'parsha achat. Yes, there's a lot of other unrelated information given to us in the Parsha of Nedarim, but okay, says the Ramban, the Torah had to put it in one place. Ulekach amar besof, Eila hamitzvot asher tziva Hashem et Moshe el b'nei Yisrael b'har Sinai, al kol hane'emarot lemala. It covers everything. Ki mikan ve'elach yidaber b'mitzvat oel moed. Because once Bamidbar starts next week, it's going to be the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu from Oel Moed. But until now, it's the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Har Sinai. That's the end of Sefer Vayikra. And that includes Shemitah and Yovel and the Tochacha and the Parshas HaNedarim, the very last Parsha that's included in Sefer Vayikra. As a result, says the Ramban, it makes complete sense that it is put in its proper place in the Torah. Even though, in theory, we could have stuck it any place. But says the Ramban, it has to be put here because it's related to what came before. Okay, that's it for this week. We already reviewed. Have a great, great Shabbos and see you next Shabbos. Bye-bye.